we gave income splitting to seniors, income splitting for pensioners, so that they could enjoy more of what they worked for all of their lives. And finally, it's why we have brought in a tax cut that I fought for since the day before I was elected, back when I was president of the Canadian Taxpayers Federation. That is why our government in this year's budget brought in, finally eliminated the marriage penalty, the penalty against families with stay-at-home parents, by bringing in income splitting and enhancing the child care benefit. And Pierre's done a brilliant job of delivering this. This means, in total, all of these tax cuts and enhanced benefits means that, Andy, an average Nepean family with kids who you will be representing is at least $6,000 better off under our government. You know, I have to give credit where it's due. It pains me to do this, but Pierre Apolliev, I can't reveal caucus confidences, but I will say this, that there has been no more persistent voice for family tax fairness and for income splitting that has led to this historic change than your former Member of Parliament, Pierre Apolliev. Thank you, Pierre, for fighting the fight. Thank you. I think the Prime Minister agreed to do this just so Pierre would stop bugging him about it at caucus. But you know, it makes a difference, friends. It makes, just think about this. If the other guys win, right? If we end up with some kind of weird Justin Mulcair left-wing coalition, tax-raising coalition government, guess what's the first thing they're going to do? They're going to scrap all those family benefits and the family tax cut. And they're going to raise taxes exactly for the kinds of working families in Nepean and the suburbs out here. They're going to raise those taxes in order to run billions of dollars through an expensive federal bureaucracy, send that money out to an even more expensive bureaucracy, regrettably in this province run by Kathleen Wynne. Boo! Lord only knows how many hundreds of millions she'll waste on the way. Yeah. In order to create a limited number of union-operated cookie-cutter 9-to-5 daycare centers that the vast majority of parents will never be able to access. The other guys always say we need evidence-based policy. I'll tell you what the evidence says. The academic research says that the so-called free or subsidized daycare in Quebec massively benefits the highest income families, because one way or another, they get to the front of the queue. And the low-income families don't. The shift workers who work in factories overnight, they're not going to get access to those spots. People who live out in the country, for a little bit more remote from Nepean, they're not going to be able to access those programs. And so, but they get, you know what? Under the Liberals and the NDP, they have to pay for them. They have to pay for them through their taxes. We take a radically different approach. We say, as Conservatives, that we respect the choices that all parents make. We believe, as our Prime Minister always says, that the real experts in childcare are mom and dad, and we support their choices correctly. And if that means institutional childcare, you've got financial support for that, and we're also supporting the provinces through the social transfer. But if it means that you want to have a mom or dad at home taking care of young children or elderly relatives, that we will support them directly. And those are the kinds of practical benefits that we've delivered. Andy, we have to remind families in Nepean not to take this for granted. It didn't just arrive. It took hard work, it took tough choices, it took fiscal discipline. It took us saying no a lot of the time to low priority spending so we could say yes to this high priority of supporting families and of supporting healthcare, and, by the way, of supporting our men and women in uniform. And I want to say, as Minister of Defense, a word about that, because when we took office, you know, we inherited a decade of neglect by the Liberals in our military. They have not acquired a single major defense system in their 13 years in office. And we have had to inherit all of that. We also inherited the major mission in Kandahar, the anti-terrorism global NATO operation there. We inherited a lot of challenges, but thanks in part to Gordon O'Connor in our first 2 years in government and his successors, including Peter MacKay, we, ladies and gentlemen, have managed to rebuild the equipment of the men and women of the Canadian Armed Forces so that they can do the job that we ask of them all around the world, and we are proud of what they do. Justin Trudeau, right now, as we speak, as we sit here, there is an attempted genocide going on in the Middle East. An insane death cult that is seeking to wipe off the face of the earth the Christians and Yazidis and other ancient indigenous minorities of Mesopotamia, of Iraq, and Syria. And in an organization that has beheaded children, crucified the people they consider infidels, kidnapped thousands of women and girls as young as 8 to turn them into slaves, and whose campaign of violence and death would have no limits had the world not come together in an international coalition last October in which Canada is participating. Had we not done so, how many hundreds of thousands of more victims would this death cult have claimed? You know, we Canadians pride ourselves on being champions of human dignity and international security. The Liberal Party of Canada used to stand for values like that, but not under not under Justin, who, when our Prime Minister decided to deploy the Royal Canadian Air Force to bomb this genocidal death cult at the invitation of the government of Iraq, Justin's response was to make a joke about it. So the Prime Minister just wanted to pull out his CF-18s to show us how big they were. I'll tell you what, Justin, fighting genocide and defending international security is no laughing matter. You, sir, are not qualified to be Prime Minister of this country with that kind of attitude. This is the same Justin who, when protesters were being shot in the streets of Kiev by a basic dictator backed by Vladimir Putin in Moscow, Justin Trudeau thought it was another worthy material for a joke, saying maybe the Russians were just upset that they lost a hockey game. Friends, does this sound to you like the temperament, the judgment of a head of government, of a $2 trillion economy, with the 6th largest military in NATO, that has been always at the front of the line in defending human dignity and opposing terrorism and tyranny around the world? I don't think so. Justin is not qualified to be our Prime Minister, and Canadians, I think, are coming to that realization and will demonstrate that on October the 19th. And let me make one, give that some applause as well. One last point. And you should have been forewarned, Andy, when you invited me to speak. I don't have a stop button, so. But there's just so many good reasons to vote Conservative. I mean, I can't. Here, I'll give you one more. I'll give you. Pierre mentioned our record of immigration reform, and there's one of the reasons that this constituency is being split is population growth, and one of the reasons for population growth is the many talented new Canadians who are arriving and making Nepean their new home. When we came to office, we inherited an immigration system that in many respects was broken. It was taking over 800,000 people waiting in line for 7 or 8 years for a decision on their applications. There was, that new Canadians had an unemployment rate almost 3 times higher than native-born Canadians. Ironically, in an economy with skilled and labor shortages, it made no sense. And too many people were sneaking in through the back door. And what we as a government decided to do was to close and lock the back door while widening the front door, to say we are an open and generous country for people who want to contribute their talent to building our country, who want to become Canadian, who want to respect our laws, values, customs, and institutions. Those are the new Canadians who we welcome. We're welcoming more than ever while we've cracked down on the fake asylum claimants, the bogus immigration marriages, the crooked immigration consultants, the human smuggling. Do you remember 5 years ago those 2 big ships from Thailand that came up to the West Coast with hundreds of illegal smuggled migrants being run by criminal gangs out of Southeast Asia? Had we taken a Liberal or NDP approach and just said, we're an easy target for this, how many thousands more would have come? And how many lives would have been lost on the high seas of people being seduced by these criminal smuggling networks to come to Canada the wrong way? We say we are an open and welcoming country, including for refugees who need our protection, people like Abdul Abdi. But please just come the legal way, respect our laws, respect Canada's values, and be part of the Canadian family. That's the Conservative message, and that's why we're winning the hearts and minds of new Canadians as well. And for all of these reasons, we are so enthusiastic that you would look at this with this great team, the youthful energy. You know, some of the media have said we've got a couple of ministers and some MPs who aren't running again, which is true, and we respect their service. But I'll tell you, I think it's healthy for government after 10 years to have some renewal, to have some new blood, some new energies, and some new ideas. Andy, you represent that. You, sir, are an entrepreneur. You've never sat around waiting for a government handout. You've always gone out there to create your own opportunities. You have experience on Parliament Hill. You know how the system works. You have the right Conservative values. You have an amazing team. And so we are absolutely certain that we'll be seeing you sworn in October as the next Member of Parliament for Nepean, as a key member of Stephen Harper's next strong, stable, national Conservative majority government. Let's get it done, ladies and gentlemen. God bless you all.